We now have control of the cyborg Ziggurat 8 on his mission to find a prototype 100 series Realian. If you remember, these are the Realians that were supposed to be paired with the eggs to combat the Gnosis. This is a stealth mission, but thankfully that doesn't mean a lot at the moment because we're invisible. And even though we can hear our incredibly loud fucking metal footsteps, apparently no one else can. We can just walk about freely and listen to the guards complain about their shifts. We can even blow shit up, getting a scope and 2 ether upgrades. The scope is an accessory that lets us see enemy health values in battle if we equip it. The ether upgrades let us give ether points to whatever character we use it on. We'll be saving that for now, just as we are, again, saving the specifics of the game mechanics for later. I swear, we'll get there eventually. There's a lot of build-up to get through in this game. To the north, we find a small shuttle that can fit 2 people that looks like it could be used for... To the right, we find a cutscene.
Damn it, a malfunction. I see. So that 100 series Realian is encoded with extensive amounts of research data, left behind by the founder of UTIC?
Yes. It's data that could affect the entire fate of mankind.
What is the founder's involvement?
The founder of UTIC was the same man who advocated the creation of that child, the 100 Series Observational Unit, Joachim Mizrahi. A madman who lost his humanity by immersing himself in science. You look as if you have something to say. Yes, you guessed correctly. He is my ex-husband. Do you want to know what it was like being married to a murderer?
No.
In any case, it's certain that the organization is frantically trying to get its hands on that data. I'm afraid we don't have much time to spare.
Understood. I'll be leaving tomorrow at 0600 hours.
Our hopes rest on you.
There's one thing I'd like to clarify.
Yes?
My instructions are to take the Realian to the Miltian star system. Yet she's registered with the government as your daughter. Why is it that you don't want me to bring her back here?
We're currently carrying out an operation based in the area between Miltia and Mictum. An operation vital to the human race. That's why I'm sending her there. That's all I can say right now. Besides, this way, I won't have to see her either.
Yuri Mizrahi. What a strange woman.
Well, so much for being invisible. It's still a stealth mission though, as we reach a tiled floor that Ziggurat 8 says will cause his footsteps to echo and alert the guards. I mean, you sound like a frickin' metal factory when you walk, but sure. We can hold R2 to walk, making it so enemies won't be alerted to our footsteps. They can still see us, though. Ziggurat 8 is significantly stronger than Xion, and these aren't Gnosis, so getting caught isn't the end of the world here. Avoiding enemies is mostly to save time and resources, since with only one character you will take damage significant enough if you get in multiple battles. The main enemies are UTIC soldiers, UTIC being the organization we're infiltrating, and they don't do much besides low damage normal attacks. They can use mustard bombs, however, that have a small chance to poison us. Up ahead, we blow up these pillars for 2 revives, and a secret wall behind the other one to hit up a staircase. There, we find a chest containing the Snake Hunter accessory, which prevents the poison status effect, in segment address 4. Navigating the installation isn't that difficult so long as you walk on the tiled floor and pay attention to the guards' patrol routes. They have a small cone of sight, meaning you have to actually get pretty close for them to notice you. Their patrols do often intersect, however, which is probably where you're going to get spotted. In fact, that's what makes getting to the center of this room so difficult, but there's a thing in the statue, so we gotta do it. I just say fuck it, get in a battle, blow up the statue, getting decoder 11, and then running to the next screen to avoid the rest. They don't follow you. We run across a bridge overlooking an area with a chest we can't get to yet, and proceed to a ladder, below which an eggs is patrolling. Well, more like it's turning around with a few extra steps, but whatever. Ziggurat 8 decides it's best to distract the guard, to which we make use of a crane to knock down some shit, including a chest we'll have to pick up later. With that, we can make our way past. By the way, he's not going to be called Ziggurat 8 for the entire game, so if that sounds awkward to you, don't worry, it's just what we know him as now.
That's odd. B block hasn't checked in yet. I'll go check up on them. You two, stay right there. Yes, sir.
Is something wrong out there?
Shut up and sit down.
That must be where she is.
Watch the enemy closely and react quickly.
Despite its unique introduction, this is just one of the fights you get into if you get caught in the previous section. Ziggurat 8 is a character with a lot of health and high physical damage, so we're not in much danger unless we either get poisoned, which that accessory we got before helps with, or take too many critical hits.
Is to only think about oneself.
Who are you?
The Contact Subcommittee sent me here to rescue you.
The Contact Subcommittee? Mommy?
Stand away from the door. I'm going to break it in.
Wait, you can't! They said an alarm would go off if I tried to force it open.
I guess looks can be deceiving.
There should be a master key held somewhere in this block. If you can find it.
All right. I'll be right back.
The two guards remain fucking dead, so we continue down to the area we saw briefly before. In addition to the human guards, there are now these creepy spider mechs, so we still want to sneak around if possible. We open that chest we knocked down earlier for 2 veils and move on. In the next corridor, we find a room full of boxes we can blow up for items. There's a lot here: an ether pack, a biosphere, a medkit, some money, a revive. I mean, surely our hubris could not possibly affect— oh, okay. Well, the mechs have more health than the guards, but they can't poison us, so they're actually less of a threat. All they do is shoot us with their little bullets. Going into another side room, we activate a security robot that we must defeat. The Guardist M1 is a strange little boss fight, primarily because its main method of direct attack is a laser that does a small amount of damage and lowers our ether attack. Ziggurat 8 doesn't have much ether attack in the first place, and we don't need to use ether attacks to take down the boss, so it's just whatever. Where this can get sticky is when it uses Assault Fire, which summons 2 drones that can swarm us with smaller attacks. The key here is to build up 6 AP to use Ziggurat's BMP-55SX, a kind of laser cluster grenade that does enough AoE damage to wipe out the drones on the turn they're summoned. Keep this up and the boss goes down pretty fast. With the security gone, we open a chest containing the master key, which will open the cell door. We head back to the prison area, opening 2 other cells before saving the little girl, finding a save point and a speed stem.
Let me just confirm. You are the 100 Series Observational Unit prototype, correct?
I don't really like that name.
Do you have another one? We'll talk later. Let's go.
Momo! Daddy calls me Momo. And then he called me Momo.
All right. Let's go, Momo.
Okay.
After her rescue, Momo joins our party and gives us a bit of an impromptu tutorial on battle positions. She suggests she stands behind Ziggurat 8 so he can protect her and she can prevent him from being pushed back by attacks like the self-explanatory back toss. Indeed, we will be doing that. Characters can be positioned into 6 different slots, 3 in the front and 3 at the back. Characters set to a back slot won't be able to use attacks, not even ranged ones, but won't be targeted by melee attacks if there's a character in front of them. They can, however, still use items and ether abilities. Momo is definitely a spellcaster archetype that focuses on healing, and her very low health makes putting her behind the much tankier Ziggurat 8 the best thing for the situation. Up ahead, we run into the utterly foolish Eggs Trooper we bamboozled before. He's actually kind of tough, and we don't have to fuck with him, it's entirely optional, but he does drop something, so we go for it. This fight is very simple, but very long. The Eggs has a lot of health and deals a lot of damage, about a quarter of Ziggurats with every swing, but thankfully Momo has the tools we need to survive. She has 2 spells. Sheet Beam, which is a sleep spell specifically targeting pilots of mechanical type enemies. This obviously puts them to sleep, though since sleep breaks on damage, it has a specific use for this fight. The Mercurio, the type of eggs this is, will sometimes use absolute defense, basically becoming immune to damage. Well, we can just put him to sleep to break him out of that and hit him anyway. Life Shot is her generic single target heal spell and what she's going to be doing pretty much exclusively for a while. Now, characters who are not in eggs do very, very little damage to enemies who are, so this fight takes about 7 fucking minutes, but our efforts are rewarded with the Decoder 4. We head back to the bridge we crossed, but yeah, it's occupied, so instead we retreat to the observation room where we got the master key.
She's gone. Where'd she go?
Are you a military Realian?
No, an ex-human.
Ex-human?
A cyborg. An ancient relic. I registered as an organ donor without giving it much thought, and they resurrected me after my death.
That infamous Life Recycling Act, right?
Yeah. The Species Preservation Act came about thanks to the mess that old law caused.
You still haven't told me your name.
It's Ziggurat 8.
Ziggurat 8? You're a real human, but your name sounds more like a model number. know. How about I call you Ziggy instead? Z-I-G-G-Y. It's short for Ziggurat.
Thanks, Dad!
I wanted to get you a real one if I could, but I just couldn't get one.
Oh no, it's great, Dad! He's so cute! Hey, Dad, what's his name? Did you give him one yet?
Nexus 6.
That's just his model number, isn't it? That makes him sound like a robot.
Yeah.
I know. How about Next? It's short for Nexus 6. What do you think? Huh, Dad?
Yeah. That's a great name.
Really? Come on, Next. Let's go. Come on, boys.
Do you think it sounds like a puppy's name?
No. Call me whatever you want.
Okay, then Ziggy it is. You'll sound a lot more human now.
Well, looks like they're gone.
You see? He's Ziggy now. We push a big red button, which opens a door further down the corridor that leads to a ladder.
Commander, the intruder is after the 100 series.
Really? Probably one of the government's dogs.
The intruder disappeared from our sensors near D Block. All units are currently patrolling the area.
Surround D Block. We'll fence them in from both sides.
Yes, sir.
We're now thrust into a chase sequence as drones fly at us. We have to avoid these puddles of what I can only assume is actual shit, because they slow us down. There's also destructibles to blow up, and we pick up a medkit and a revive along the way. Eventually, we come to these pipes that lead into pits. If we fall off the narrow pipes, we can use the ladders to get up on either side, and then you should just go to the other side because we get caught by trying to re-attempt crossing. These drones fire lasers, which are ether attacks, and often spend a turn to buff their ether attack. All this does, though, is give us enough time to get 6 AP to use Ziggy's circle attack and blow them all up. I actually got caught because I missed a detour that leads to below the bridge area. The chest contains an ether upgrade Z, and also inspecting the large symbol has Ziggy remarking on the fact that this base used to be a cathedral, the asteroid it's located on being a place of pilgrimage for some ancient religion. Oh, we also blow up some pedestals of this ancient religion for some ether packs. Anyway, we head back to the pipes. The only real way to cross them without falling off is by walking, and even then, the controls aren't really precise enough to avoid it completely. Up ahead, we avoid more human shit puddles before reaching a ladder.
Eggs units. This sure doesn't look like a simple resurgence of an armed group.
What should we do?
I don't know. We won't be able to stay here much longer.
A large number of soldiers are making their way over here. At this rate, this room will be filled with over 100 soldiers in 8 minutes.
Recon realians are pretty handy. I guess rushing them is out of the question.
Even for you?
Not even a cyborg can take on 3 eggs units. I'd be shot to pieces.
What if the eggs units couldn't use their sensors?
Well, it would probably help. But why?
I can reduce their ability to some extent.
How?
The Hilbert Effect. Using inverted Hilbert wavelengths, I can create cross-interference that automatically shuts down the XD-SSS enemy sensor system. That should take out most of their external sensors.
The Hilbert Effect?
It's an anti-gnosis materialization system. Normally, it's spread out over a wide range via an amplifier installed on board a spacecraft. But I can create the effect by myself in small areas like this.
That might work. All right, go ahead.
Okay. All right, here I go.
The Hilbert Effect. So this is our secret weapon against the Gnosis.
What was that? What happened? Hilbert waves. Somebody's using the Hilbert effect on us. My enemy sensor system has shut down. It's the 100 series. I can tell from the cross interference. Find her. She's close.
You mentioned cross interference. Do you feel the effects too?
I'm fine. I'm supposed to have a much higher capacity than them.
Rest a bit. I'll take care of this.
I'm okay. I can still help out. My nano repair function's still operational. You don't know when to give up!
This is a fight between a Zolfo, the captain in the middle, and 2 of the Mercurio we fought before. Thankfully, because Momo shut down their sensory equipment, that apparently makes it so they take more damage. That said, they still hit hard and have a lot of HP. There is a very important gimmick here, though, that makes this fight much more manageable. You see, we can put these guys to sleep with Momo's Sheep Beam, obviously, but if we do that on one of the Mercurios, the captain will actually shoot them to wake them up. This does a good amount of damage to them, and while you might think it's overall a detriment to us since we can't put them both to sleep and focus on the captain, the trick is the captain actually uses his turn to do this. By sleeping one of his subordinates, we essentially lock down the captain while making him deal damage for us. It does get dicey, however, once Ziggy starts taking damage, since sleeping one of the Mercurios is a turn that Momo isn't healing. He actually goes down for us here, but thankfully we had a revived DX to bring him back up. I opted to focus on the captain, guarding with Ziggy once he got low to boost his AP and to heal. Once he was good, he unloads on the captain while Momo keeps sleeping the others. Eventually, the captain goes down, and because he had been doing constant damage to his buddies, they go down not too long after. This fight is still pretty long though, so since we got the time, let's talk a bit about our 2 new characters here. There isn't much to say about Momo yet. I mean, she's an advanced military android capable of materializing extra-dimensional beings into reality, but other than that, so far she's just a little girl. Also, yeah, she does fight with a wand. It's never really explained, at least not from my memory anyway. It might come up later since I'm looking deep into things for this series, but yeah, she just has a magic wand. As for Ziggy, you might be able to guess that he's my favorite character that I alluded to before. You've probably heard his voice actor Richard Epcar in a million different things, but I find Ziggy to be my favorite role of his. For instance, we don't know specifics about Ziggy's past, but before we even see the flashback with his son, I think the vocal performance tells us a lot about him with how he talks to Momo. When speaking to Wille Mizrahi and the other members of the government who hired him, he takes a very cold and matter-of-fact tone, but he speaks to Momo like a normal adult would talk to a child. He has a very calming quality to him, despite being a cyborg raised from the dead against his will after apparently killing himself. Also, fun fact, Ziggy is the primary protagonist of Xenosaga Pied Piper, a Japanese exclusive Xenosaga game that I'm probably not going to get into, because it was only ever released in Japan on the Vodafone, so yeah, not the most accessible game. And yes, he is clearly meant to resemble Ziggy Stardust. He really doesn't have any other relation to David Bowie beyond that name and his appearance, though. The Life Recycling Act and the Species Preservation Act are an interesting bit of lore in the world of Xenosaga that will be important much later on. Essentially, the Life Recycling Act was passed on the surface during a time of scarcity as a means of preserving resources. Those resources, however, included human beings, and so people like Ziggy were revived upon their death and turned into, of course, weapons. In addition, this led to the creation of cloning and genetic manipulation, which is what actually got the act repealed because it was creating instability in the human species as a whole. A major problem given in the database is people would alter their genes in a way to fit with their environment, but this made it so they couldn't properly function outside of that environment. Not good for a species that's achieved space travel. The Species Preservation Act was a way for the government to basically say, hey, maybe our genes worked fine just the way they were. It specifically mentioned, however, that though this act outlawed cloning and genetic manipulation, it's not standardized and such things still happen. Anyway, there's still like 5 minutes left of this fight, so let's speed things up a bit.
Don't take it too hard. You didn't stand a chance.
With that done, we blow up some stuff for 2 biospheres and 8 medkits. We're not done fighting here, if you couldn't guess. We then continue through a door to a room with a save point. This leads us back to the familiar area with tiled floors, meaning all we have to do is backtrack a bit to get to the escape shuttle we found earlier. Before that, however, we return to the hidden staircase and the segment address we found. We use the decoder we picked up from the optional eggs fight and find a chest containing the thief ring. This is an accessory that essentially increases the quality of enemy item drops, pretty useful. With that, we get the Dale out of Earnhardt.
I see. It's that body of yours that got you this far. Still, what a worthless bunch. I can't believe they couldn't stop a lone cyborg.
Ziggy, this is the guy.
Yeah, I know. Looks like I'm about to get some decent exercise. And this baby's quite pleased as well.
Momo, be careful. He's no ordinary enemy.
That he isn't, Ziggy, as Margulis is probably the biggest challenge new players will face in the game to this point. In fact, this is technically a supposed to lose fight since you don't actually have to win it, though it's much easier than most fights like that are. He actually has a very small amount of HP, but his mechanics are such that if you don't know what you're doing, he'll wipe the floor with you. The main thing that trips people up are his two skills, Flame Dragon and Lightning Spirit. These cause him to absorb either the next flame attack or lightning attack he takes, which just so happens to be the elements associated with Ziggy's two tech attacks. Pay attention and use the opposite to what spell he uses. In addition, he has the ability to knock Ziggy back if Momo isn't behind him, but if you listen to Momo, that won't happen. He primarily attacks with Hellcrest, which does a good amount of damage, but the difficult part is it hits in a line, meaning Momo will be taking just as much damage in this fight as Ziggy. That means that if you want to beat him, there isn't a lot of room for error. You need to use the right attacks as soon as you're able and rush him down. The support items we've picked up along the way help a lot, especially the speed stem since it can move Ziggy up in the turn order. Overall, I really like this fight as a test for how much you've been paying attention to the battle system so far, but one that doesn't overly punish newer players. For beating him, we get the Purple Ring, a decent accessory that increases ether attack.
Mystic powers! Grant me a miracle!
Let's go!
Mystic powers! Grant me a miracle!
Hell's Crest!
Mystic powers! Grant me a miracle!
Hell's Crest! Let's go! What's wrong? Is that all you got?
You ready?
Uh-huh.
What? Pursuit fighter! Hurry!
Thorough, isn't he?
Hurry up and put out the fire before the ammo ignites!
you're late.
Is something wrong?
No, it's nothing. Momo, find a trade column and short jump us out of here. I want to get back on our return path once we shake off the pursuit.
Okay.